Welcome to Soul Shift, where modern science meets soul and real life meets transformation. I'm Allie Anderson, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Mindy Gorman-Pletzer and Christine Morgenstern-Shin. And today's conversation feels like one so many women are quietly sitting in. That moment where something inside you starts asking, is this it? Or maybe more gently, what's next? Not because something is wrong, but because something is shifting. And today we're joined by a wonderful woman, Hilary Reynolds. Hilary is the founder of She Said Next and a marketing and growth strategist with 28 years of experience in nonprofit marketing and fundraising. After decades of building mission-driven campaigns and turning 50, Hilary began asking a different question. What's next? What started as a personal reflection became a platform for helping women navigate midlife with clarity, peace, and intention. Through storytelling, faith-rooted reflection, and practical guidance, Hilary encourages women to release old scripts, reconnect with joy, and take small, meaningful steps into a more aligned next chapter.
Welcome to Soul Shift, a sacred space where modern science, ancient wisdom, and real life come together in perfect harmony.
Each week, we explore the gentle art of transformation. Soul Shift holds space for your beautiful, messy, perfectly imperfect human experience.
Meaningful change doesn't have to break you open. It can unfold softly, like morning light.
Together, we'll uncover tools that honor your truth, share conversations that touch your soul, and celebrate the exquisite complexity of what it means to be human.
Your presence here is a gift. Let's shift with grace,
with love,
together.
Hilary, we're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here, and I just appreciate you guys having me on the podcast.
Wonderful. Before we dive into what I know is going to be a really deep conversation about our midlife shifts, can you share with our audience your background and what led you to create She Said Next?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks for the kind introduction, and I'm happy to share a little bit about my background and what led me to create She Said Next. Thanks for asking about that. As you mentioned, I have spent the last 28 years in marketing, and I have been leading teams, building brands, and helping organizations grow. And while I generally love my career, over time I realized that while I built a very full life, I hadn't left much space for me. And at the same time, my personal life was shifting. My daughter is now 27. She's married with two little boys, my grandsons, Hunter and Troy. And suddenly the house got quieter. So that combination of professional stability and personal transition, it created this question I couldn't ignore anymore, which is what's next for me? And that's really gave me the idea for She Said Next. It was born out of that moment, both the question and the permission I gave myself to explore it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And congratulations on your grandsons. That's wonderful. I love hearing how She Said Next came to life. And as I was reading through your work, something really stood out to me. You don't describe midlife as a crisis. Some of us think of it like that, but you describe it as a stirring. And I love that word. It's a stirring. And I think so many women feel like something is shifting, but they don't necessarily have the language for it. So can you share what you mean by a stirring?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Midlife often gets mislabeled as a crisis. And when it's actually clarity that's knocking, it doesn't mean that we have to go out and buy a sports car or, do something crazy. But for many women, this is the first time life slows down just enough to hear ourselves think. So as our responsibilities shift, as things get quieter, and we become more aware of our desires or questions that maybe we've pushed aside for many years, that unsettled feeling, it isn't something going wrong, it's something waking up. It's a stirring, which is an invitation to pay attention, not to panic. I think many women have tied their worth to being needed. I know I did. It was always about what did my daughter need and what does my husband need. But midlife is an opportunity for us to stop and unlearn that our values don't always come from roles or productivity. We also have to unlearn comparison and perfection because that's what steals joy and purpose. So this is a season about remembering who you are beyond what you do for everybody else.
I love that. What you're saying, Hilary, is just so relatable. And I love the concept of She Said Next. And when you partner that with a concept of stirring, it really becomes something that we can yearn for, something we can move towards instead of thinking of parts of our life as being final or over. I really love that so much. And I think a lot of women come to this season of life realizing that they've been living inside roles for so long. And rather than shutting the door, we can think about that stirring as opening a door to so many possibilities, right? And back to those roles have been beautiful and meaningful, but for many women, they were very limiting. So I'm curious, when those roles start to shift, as you so beautifully articulated about the role shifting in your own life, how does identity begin to change? So many women, especially women that I work with, are so tied to their story, so tied to their identity, that the question really becomes, who will I be without it? Who will I be if I step up and let this go?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And, many of us, we're building around being, at least in my case, a mom, a good wife, a professional, a caregiver, and probably other things that many women are familiar with. But those roles, they shift. And when they do, it can feel very disorienting, like the ground moved from underneath us. But midlife is actually an opportunity to reclaim identity rather than lose it. It's a chance to stop and ask, who am I beyond what I do for others? So this is a season women need to redefine themselves with intention instead of obligation. And for me, that's exactly why I try to look at it that way, is it doesn't have to be a panic mode. It can really be an opportunity, and an opportunity to do some really amazing things in your life, things that you've always wanted to do but couldn't do. In my case, growing up or raising my daughter, I was home a lot, and I, took her to soccer practice and went to games and all of these different things that I, had to do for her. And I love to travel, but travel really wasn't a thing for me. But now it is. Now I have more capacity and time to travel, more time to be with my friends. And all of those things are about shifting my identity in a new way. And it doesn't have to be scary. You don't have to panic from it. I think maybe you grieve a little bit because it is a big shift, but it's also exciting. And you get to do some things that you've always wanted to do. So I look at it as an opportunity for sure.
Thank you for that.
Hilary, what you're describing when you're talking about shifting from one identity to the other, I love how you're framing it, that it doesn't have to be scary, that it could be an opportunity versus a challenge. And I tend to look, when I think of identity and I think of the body, I always go inward. And so a lot of times I connect things to the nervous system. And I'm curious, because when a lot of people, women I work with, when their identity shifts, a lot of times their nervous system, better lack of a term, goes bonkers. Like it just gets off kiltered because it's a little unsettling, right? Like they don't have that grounded confidence that they usually have if they know that I am the mom or I am, in said career, right? And so even though you're guiding these women to something that's expansive and good in a new season of life, what do you think happens to them internally, like during this new season of change? Like they are striving through with no worries, or do you feel like there is a disruption in their nervous system? And if there is, how do they begin to feel grounded again? Like how do they get their feet kind of planted and start feeling confident again? Do you have a process for that or a concept?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there is definitely a nervous system response to it. I know for me there was, and through some changes at work that I had to navigate, it definitely felt scary because I felt like I wasn't on stable ground anymore. And that really had me concerned. And I think, faith is a really important part of how I approach things. It's very deeply personal and foundational for me. And the heart of it is really this soulful reflection. So I can remember praying a very simple prayer. God, show me what joy looks like in this season. And that question about joy, peace, alignment, that transcends our belief systems. And whether someone approaches this from faith, spirituality, or simply a desire to live more intentionally, the practices of reflecting, practicing gratitude, and listening inward are universally meaningful. And faith can become an anchor in midlife. It doesn't remove uncertainty, but it can give women courage on the inside. It helps us to trust that recurring desires aren't random, they're often invitations. And that faith reminds us that we're not late, behind, or forgotten. And for me, that definitely has been the cornerstone and anchoring point to calm my nervous system and to really deeply trust that God already has a plan for me. And this is a time of excitement. This should be where I should be looking forward to what is new. Look at it as positive and then the great things you get to experience that you couldn't before.
What you shared was so layered that I think anyone could connect to it, no matter where they are on that spectrum of believing in, a higher power or God or, the universe or nature, whatever it is for them. I think that connecting how we feel inside to that, knowing that it's not just us, is a really powerful way to get through. So thanks for sharing.
And I also think that the kind of soul-based thinking that we're talking about here creates a sense of clarity that perhaps wasn't there before. And because we often think clarity comes before action, you're actually describing something different. It sounds like clarity actually comes through action. What brings me joy? How am I being taken care of? Taking action like such as that perhaps brings the clarity that is so necessary to move through this season of life, this season of change. And it's small steps, right, Hilary? It's small steps that matter so much more than the big reinventions that women think are so necessary in this season of life.
Yeah, big reinventions can feel really inspiring, but to many women, they can be very overwhelming and frankly, sometimes unsustainable. And I think, small steps are accessible and powerful. They help build confidence and momentum without that pressure. So I truly believe that your next chapter doesn't start with a leap. It starts with just one intentional step. Small choices, practiced daily, that shapes a life more than dramatic declarations ever could. I'm not saying that I haven't had my own share of dramatic declarations because I have. I have big ideas. I'm a big thinker and very creative. But honestly, just doing one small thing can help you move forward into it. What I would tell women too is I would say, if you're not sure where to start, I would tell you that you don't have to start with the whole plan. You just need to be willing to start. So pay attention to the nudge instead of dismissing it. And one honest question, one small step, one brave yes can change everything. And that's actually why I created this 30-day faith and reflection journal. And I just want to share about that because for me, even going through it myself, I found it to be so helpful as you're navigating midlife. You can go through it and it's inspired by my own need of gentle, structured way to reflect without the hustle or the overwhelm. I wanted to create a way for us to pause, to listen, and to release what no longer serves us, and being able to choose what comes next with intention. Ultimately, the 30-day journal that I have, it creates a midlife manifesto, which is a declaration that you write for yourself. How do you want to live going forward? It's not about hustle or achievement anymore. It's about alignment. After years of living by expectations of others, this is where you get to choose your values and on your purpose for what you want going forward.
So what you're saying, just to clarify, is that taking those actions, as small as they might be, is what actually creates the clarity in terms of what can be next.
Yes, definitely.
I
Absolutely.
want to make sure I got that right.
Yeah.
Everything you're doing to me makes so much sense from a nervous system perspective too, because these small steps, that's literally what we teach. The smaller the step, the more comfortable it is for the physical body, and intentional creates a safety in the body. When we feel safe and secure and grounded and confident, that's where we can expand in a more organic way. And that's what I'm hearing from my lens.
Absolutely. And I think it is important that women do feel safe and confident. And this is the time in our lives where if we can ground ourselves first in what we know to be true and what we really want for our future, for the next phase in our next chapter in our life, and that's where that journaling comes in, then we have something that gives us basically a playbook for how to carry it out. And that playbook establishes safety and confidence because we know we're confident women. We've done our time helping others. This is what we want. This is how we're going to take it forward. And we can do that with confidence because we know exactly the direction that we want to go.
I think your 30-day journal is just, people are going to love working through that and sort of find it as a really great guidance because I think so many women hit this stage of life and feel like, all this is changing. If kids are leaving the home, their parents are aging, and they start to feel like, I need to reinvent myself. I need to figure out who's the new me. And I think what you're offering is just simplicity. It's just slow down, take 30 days to take these small questions and reflect a little bit, right? And really come back to yourself. And it doesn't have to be a big reinvention. So I love that. And I'm grateful that you created that. And Hilary, I want to shift just a little bit because I know your journey wasn't about reinventing yourself in a big way, but I want to hear about your My Wine Walk and what that experience sort of taught you and how that came about also.
Thanks for bringing that up. In addition to She Said Next, I also have on Instagram, you can find me there, or at my website. It's called mywinewalk.com. And when I was kind of going through and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with this next phase of my life, I started to want to explore. I'm a very creative person, as I mentioned. I wanted to explore different things. And my love of wine started as a simple curiosity, but it grew into more learning, travel, storytelling, and eventually this idea behind my wine walk. And that turned me into a bit of an influencer, which I hadn't really planned on being, but it has come with some great opportunities. And so it surprised me how my curiosity of trying something new opened doors I'd never planned. And that includes partnerships, brand collaborations, and creative outlets that help me feel joyful and energized. I get wine shipments often from wineries here in the Pacific Northwest for free, and I review the wines online, which has been phenomenal. And it also has started to become an opportunity for me to grow what I want to have as my own marketing business down the road, where I'm helping wineries with their marketing, because that's sort of my background. So I started taking what I know that I do well and where my passions are and found a way to put them together in a creative way that was something I'd never thought of doing. And that just kind of goes to show that learning doesn't stop in midlife, it expands. And our interests aren't random. They're clues pointing us towards what's next. And that's an example of, for me, of something that was next. And so I share that because I hope that that's an inspiring story for women to think, wow, I've always wondered about that, but I didn't think I could do that. You absolutely can. And you can pretty much do anything you want to take on. And that's where, She Said Next also came about. So I'm juggling two separate, side hustles, so to speak, but they're both just so fun. And what I think is important is, in this time in your life, do something that not only that you've always wanted to do, but something that generates that passion in you, that energizes you, that gets you up every morning. And it doesn't have to be hard to figure out. Once I kind of worked through my own journal after 30 days, I started to see where things connect and where I was excited, what I'd love to do, what I did well. And that's how it kind of grew. And I'm just feeling really energized by it. And I hope that every woman tries something.
That's such great advice.
Great advice. And something else that you touched on that I think is really meaningful in this season, and that's connection. Friendship, community, the way we relate to others. Why does connection take on such a different meaning in midlife and beyond?
Yeah, I would say that, friendship in midlife is really critical. And I've found this to be incredibly important to me. In earlier seasons, my friendships, they often had to fit into the margins in between kids' schedules, work demands, and overall exhaustion that we all feel trying to juggle so many things, right? We've all been there. But, midlife brings a deeper awareness that connection, it's not a luxury, it's essential. And, God talks a lot about community and the importance and value of community. And I believe in that. And I personally felt a strong desire to really cultivate deeper and more meaningful friendships, relationships where there's space for honesty, laughter, and shared growth. We're no longer just surviving together, we're choosing connection on purpose. And my friendship circle has grown, and I have a great network now, but they're also very deep friendships. I like to consider myself a pretty loyal friend. Once I've committed to you and trust you, I'm pretty much deeply loyal. But so are all the women that I'm surrounding myself with. And I would encourage women to think about your friendship circle a little differently as well. Sometimes there are friends in the circle that drain you and take up more time and exhaust you. You don't have to stay friends with everybody. It's okay to let some friendships go. I really had to do that, and there's been several that I have had to let go of. But it's allowed more space for me to take on friends who are deeply meaningful and basically reflect back to me what I reflect to them. And I know now that if I'm having a bad day, I know I can pick up the phone and call them and have a great conversation, a meaningful conversation that can help me work through. And I know I can be there for them as well. I had a good friend come over 2 weeks ago, and she's like, "Can I just come over and stop by for a bottle of wine?" I said, "Absolutely." And she was struggling with some things, and we just talked. And taking that time, it worked wonders, and she was so appreciative. And it doesn't even have to be just about that. Sometimes friendship is just about having fun. And a lot of my friends, they share my love of wine, which is great. We always love that. And basically, I set up an annual wine get together, and I schedule it every year, put it together. This coming summer, we're going to go to Canada. And we just have fun. We just enjoy wine tasting. We enjoy laughter and getting away for 3 or 4 days from everything. It has just done wonders for me and just my soul. It has given me back something that I was desperately needing. And I encourage women to do that. Expand your friendships. This is the season where we really need to have good friends, let go of the friends that are not, being helpful, and just spend time with them. Make plans. Set up a group. What I do is I set up a text group. And when I see something like a wine event or something fun, I just share it out and I say, if anyone can go and you want to meet me, love to see you. And a lot of people come and we have a great time.
Sounds wonderful.
And I love how you're making this a little more effortless in terms of it just sounds very natural. Like you're aligning yourselves with people that are like-minded and that you're connecting with and you're laughing with and you're enjoying each other's company. And you said something along the lines of like the energy you're putting out is the same as the energy you're attracting back in. And that's naturally going to happen anyhow. So that's amazing that you're creating such a supportive community. I think a lot of women struggle for that. Like later in life, when the kids are gone and, a lot of people make friends because their kids are in school together, right? If they're dog moms, they see, the dogs at the park, right? But afterwards, it's a little more challenging to have like that connection. And so I think a lot of women like that are listening are yearning for that.
Definitely.
Definitely. And Hilary, I want to, again, switch gears a tiny bit, just because this is something that we both share. I know you've navigated autoimmune challenges, as have I. I know a lot of women in midlife also come, if it's not autoimmune in nature, they've come with some kind of physical shift that they weren't expecting necessarily. And so I wanted to ask you, how has your autoimmune experience shaped the way you're thinking about stress and well-being and how you're moving through this season of life?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. This is definitely a topic that I'm also equally passionate about because it has affected me in such a significant way. And it's fairly new for me, the autoimmune. And now I have 2 autoimmune diseases. I have psoriatic arthritis and then also sarcoidosis. And this sarcoidosis is a new one for me in the last 2 or 3 years. And it affects my lungs and it builds up granulomas, which makes it hard to breathe, but it also causes a lot of joint pain and then fatigue. And some days the fatigue is absolutely so exhausting I can't function. And then I have days like today where I feel pretty good and I feel like a normal person again. And I've noticed the more that I have talked with women that there are increasingly more and more women out there in midlife who are experiencing autoimmune challenges. And if it's not autoimmune, it could be some other health related issue. And so when you're living with something like that, especially in midlife, I think it really forces you to rethink everything. You have to stop and think about the effect that it has on your stress level, what it does to the pace of what you do every day, the food that you eat, experiencing rest, and ultimately how this all leads to joy. Because that's what we're really talking about is, keeping joyful and moving forward and finding what's next. But sometimes there are limitations that pull us back. And I had to learn that pushing harder isn't always an option. And for me, I'm someone who's high challenge. And so this has really humbled me. And it shifted how I think about success and happiness. So I have to prioritize low stress. I have to prioritize nourishment, rest, and the simple pleasures. And I think all of you understand that. You talk about that quite a bit with your audiences as well. And it just reinforces the idea that in midlife, it is equally important to find what's next for you to keep you energized, but your health is also critically important. And it's not always just your physical health, it's emotional and spiritual too. And as women, that's where having those friendships, going back to that, is so important because they're the people who understand you the best. They're the people who know you. But you also have to figure out how to manage your own life and your own health, because if you're not well and putting yourself first, then it makes it harder for you to enjoy the things that you want to try and do. So I just encourage women, it's not something to shy away from. It's not something to be embarrassed by, but learn about it, understand it, and then manage it and be okay to say no. I mean, there are days when I just have to say, I'm sorry, I can't go. And that's because I know that my body needs time to slow down and rest. And I don't have to say yes to everything. I need to prioritize myself in order to reach what I want in terms of keeping joy in my life.
I love that you shared that. I feel like it's been consistent in all of your messaging is this idea of just peace with where you are, right? And if today is a harder day and you have to say no to rest, then that's okay. Embrace this space of peace with where you are today. I think that's an important message, especially in this world of everything's measured by achievement. So I really am grateful that today we're talking about just being very comfortable with this life shift and this space that we're all holding together. So thank you.
If you notice the sign behind me, it says, "It is well with my soul." And I was at a garage sale and I saw this sign and I just knew I had to have it because it's so core to just that sense of peace and being okay with where you're at and deep trust and saying, this is what it is today. Tomorrow's a different day and it might be better tomorrow, but whatever it is today, I'm okay with it.
And there's a tremendous shift when we connect to the deepest part of our soul. We are in such a place of alignment. That deepest part of our soul is truly where joy and love, not in the romantic sense, but just love and that deepest breath exists. So I thank you for sharing that. I can really relate.
Hilary, this has been such a grounding and really, really encouraging conversation. So thank you for today. And before we close out, I definitely want our listeners to know where can they find the 30-day journal that you were talking about?
Yep. I would say go ahead and visit me online at www.shesaidnext.com and you can download it's a free 30-day reflection journal. Be sure and sign up for my newsletter where I share encouragement, reflection prompts, and guidance for midlife women. And give me a follow on Instagram at She Said Next and join the conversation there. This isn't a season that you have to figure out alone. And I would love to connect with each and every one of you.
Wonderful. And I do really encourage our listeners to follow Hilary on Instagram, She Said Next, because everything she posts is so encouraging and uplifting. And I've told Hilary before that sometimes I feel like it's just the message I needed to see today. So thank you.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. And thank you for giving us language that so many women are feeling. And to everyone who's listening today, maybe today's takeaway is simply this, to trust that question of what's next. It isn't something to fear. It's just something to follow. And we don't necessarily have to do it all at once. Start with Hilary's 30-day journal. Nothing ever has to be done perfectly. It's just one small step at a time. And midlife isn't the end of your story, and it may just be the beginning of an aligned chapter. And we'll share all of Hilary's links in the show notes so that you can continue learning from her. And if this episode resonated with you, we'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might need this message today. And as always, let's keep shifting gently together.
Thank you for sharing the sacred time today.
We hope something in this conversation touched your heart
and offered nourishment for your soul's journey.
Remember, transformation is most effortless when it happens one tender shift at a time.
Until next week, we invite you to carry one insight from today into your life.
Not as a task.
Think of it as a superpower to yourself.
If something resonated, we'd love to hear from you. If you're joining us on YouTube, feel free to leave us a comment below.
Your words ripple outward, offering connection and comfort to others walking this path beside you.
If Soulship feels like home, please subscribe and consider leaving us a review.
Your support will help us reach more hearts that need to hear they're not alone.
We're holding you in love, so know you're not alone. Your journey matters.
May your heart be filled,
and may your path be filled with grace.